For more than 60 years, America thought it knew Shelley Fabares. She was the sweet teenage daughter millions welcomed into their living rooms. She was the young woman singing Johnny Angel while an entire generation listened. She stood beside Elvis Presley on the movie screen, then returned years later as the calm, intelligent heart of one of television's most beloved comedies. But the smiling face people remembered concealed a life marked by 3 battles few viewers fully understood. One battle nearly took her life when her liver began to fail. One began when Alzheimer's disease slowly took her mother away, memory by memory. And one ended only 2 days ago, when Shelley's family announced that she had died in Los Angeles at the age of 82, surrounded by people who loved her. Her husband, actor and activist Mike Farrell, had been beside her through more than 4 decades of marriage. Their story did not begin like a Hollywood fairy tale. It began with 2 people who had already been hurt, 2 lives carrying unfinished histories, and a quiet cup of coffee that changed everything. What happened during Shelley's final years? Why did surviving a transplant alter the way she measured time? And what did her family choose to remember when the cameras, the applause, and the familiar television images were finally stripped away? The answer begins with a little girl from Santa Monica who learned very early how to smile on command. Shelley Fabares was born on January 19, 1944. Before she was old enough to understand fame, she was modeling and acting. By 10, she had appeared on television. The adults around her saw discipline, timing, and a face the camera trusted. America would soon see something more intimate. The daughter it wished lived next door. In 1958, Shelley became Mary Stone on the Donna Reed Show. Donna Reed played her television mother, but their bond reached beyond the set. Donna represented steadiness, professionalism, and a kind of grace that did not need to demand attention. Shelley watched how she worked. She watched how she treated people. And while audiences believed they were simply seeing a warm, fictional household, Shelley was absorbing lessons that would stay with her long after the series ended. Then came a surprise nobody had planned. Shelley recorded Johnny Angel, though she never thought of herself as a great singer. In 1962, the song reached #1. Suddenly, the television daughter was also a pop star. Teenagers bought the record, radio stations played it constantly, and Shelley's soft voice became attached to first dances, first crushes, and memories that would outlive the era itself. Success arrived so quickly that it could have rewritten her entire identity. But Shelley never seemed eager to pretend that every door had opened because of some grand master plan. Sometimes life had simply placed her in the right room, beside the right people, at the right moment. And one of those people was Elvis Presley. Shelley appeared with Elvis in Girl Happy, Spin Out, and Clambake. To the public, he was already a phenomenon. To a young actress working beside him, he was also a scene partner, a colleague, and a source of laughter between takes. Shelley later remembered those films with affection. The bright colors and romantic plots were entertainment, but the memories behind them were real. Yet this is where her life divided into 2 stories. There was the public Shelley, the sitcom daughter, the singer, the Elvis leading lady. And there was the private Shelley, learning that applause could not protect anyone from illness, loss, or time. Her career kept changing. She appeared in Brian's Song, one of the most emotionally enduring television films of its period. She took roles on series such as One Day at a Time. Then, in 1989, she joined Coach as Christine Armstrong, later Christine Fox, opposite Craig T. Nelson. It could have been simply another job. Instead, it became a second television home. Coach lasted 9 seasons. Shelley's character was not there merely to admire the loud, stubborn football coach at the center of the show. Christine challenged him. She steadied him. She gave the comedy an emotional intelligence it would not have possessed without her. Shelley received 2 Emmy nominations, but the deeper reward was the bond created by years of shared work. After her death, Craig T. Nelson described her as foundational to his life and remembered her warmth, her smile, and the advice she gave so generously. That tribute matters because it confirms what viewers sensed: the tenderness on screen was supported by genuine respect off screen. But while Shelley was making millions laugh, one of the most painful stories of her life was unfolding beyond the studio. Her mother, Elsa, developed Alzheimer's disease. Anyone who has watched that illness move through a family understands why ordinary words fail. Alzheimer's does not always take a person in one dramatic moment. It can take recognition first, then shared stories, then names, then the tiny habits that made a home feel familiar. The body remains present while pieces of the relationship seem to disappear. For Shelley, this was not a distant cause selected by a celebrity. This was her mother, the woman who had known her before television, before the hit record, before Elvis and awards and magazine covers, was losing access to the very memories that connected them. Shelley could have grieved privately and walked away from the subject. Instead, she turned anguish into service. Beginning in the late 1980s, she worked with the Alzheimer's Association, served in leadership, spoke publicly, and testified before Congress. She helped give caregivers a recognizable voice because she understood the exhaustion, confusion, guilt, and heartbreak that families often endure behind closed doors. Her mother died in 1992. The loss did not end Shelley's involvement. If anything, it gave the work a permanent place in her life. Fame, which had once seemed like an accidental spotlight, became something she could direct toward families who felt unseen. Then, without warning, Shelley became the patient. In early 1999, an emergency involving internal bleeding led doctors to the truth: her liver was failing. She was diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis, a condition in which the immune system attacks the liver. The woman who had spent decades arriving prepared, hitting her marks, and keeping production moving was suddenly trapped inside a timetable she could not control. She needed a transplant. And needing one did not mean receiving one. For roughly 22 months, Shelley waited. Every telephone call carried the possibility of life-changing news. Every day passed with the knowledge that her condition could worsen before a suitable donor organ became available. Imagine that kind of waiting. The world outside continues. People shop for groceries, complain about traffic, make plans for next month. But for the person on a transplant list, the future narrows to a question nobody can answer: will help arrive in time? Shelley later described the ordeal with the perspective of someone who understood that a second chance always contains somebody else's tragedy. A donor family had lost someone. Their decision allowed another person to live. In October 2000, the call finally came. The transplant was performed, and Shelley survived. That sentence sounds simple. It was not. Surgery was only the beginning. Recovery demanded strength, medication, vigilance, and the emotional adjustment of knowing that time had been returned to her through an extraordinary act of generosity. And beside her was Mike Farrell. Many viewers knew Mike as B.J. Honeycutt on MASH. Shelley had known him earlier through their professional world, but their romance emerged after they reconnected as adults carrying complicated lives. Mike later remembered a CBS dinner around 1980 when he was emotionally shaken by what he had witnessed while visiting refugee camps in El Salvador. Shelley sat beside him. Her presence calmed something in him. It was not fireworks manufactured for a movie. It was recognition. Later, after one of Mike's talks, they went for coffee. Conversation became companionship. Companionship became love. They married on December 31, 1984, in the backyard of Shelley's aunt, actress Nanette Fabre. The marriage lasted for the rest of Shelley's life. 42 years is an unusual phrase in Hollywood. It contains ordinary mornings no audience sees, arguments that never reach a gossip column, private jokes, medical appointments, family responsibilities, disappointments, reconciliations, and the repeated decision to remain. Mike brought children from his earlier marriage, and Shelley became part of a blended family. She once joked about the uncertainty of stepping into that role, but behind the humor was the serious work of earning trust. She had spent years portraying family on television. Now she was helping to build one without scripts. When her liver failed, Mike was not watching from a safe distance. He was living the waiting with her. He was there when the future was measured in test results and telephone calls. And after the transplant, he was there for the years that followed the years neither of them could assume they would receive. Those years were not merely an epilogue. Shelley continued to appear publicly and to support the causes that mattered to her. She spoke about organ donation because she was living proof of what one donor could make possible. She continued advocating for families touched by Alzheimer's because she knew that caregiving could be both an expression of love and a source of profound loneliness. She also looked back on Coach with joy. In a 2024 podcast appearance, she called the experience fabulous. That word carries more weight when you consider what the series represented. Coach had given her a mature role, lasting friendships, and a new generation of viewers. It proved that the teenage face America remembered could grow into an actress of humor, authority, and emotional depth. Then came the news no admirer wanted to hear. On August 22, 2026, Shelley Fabares died in Los Angeles at 82. Her family said she was surrounded by loved ones. No cause of death was publicly disclosed. That absence matters. It means her medical history should not be turned into speculation. We know she endured liver failure. We know a transplant extended her life by more than a quarter century. We know Alzheimer's devastated her family and inspired decades of advocacy. But we do not know that either of those things caused her death, and respect requires leaving the unanswered question unanswered. What the family did share was the measure of the woman they knew. They remembered her warmth, humor, kindness, compassion, and support. Notice what is missing from that list: chart positions, ratings, awards, and famous co-stars. The achievements mattered. But at the end, the people closest to Shelley did not describe a product or an image. They described the feeling of being loved by her. That is the most emotional turn in her story. The public first met Shelley as someone's television daughter. Later, they saw her as someone's leading lady, someone's co-star, someone's wife. But in private, she became the person who stayed beside a mother losing her memories. She became an advocate who walked into rooms where policy was discussed and insisted that caregivers and patients be seen. She became a transplant survivor who understood every extra birthday as borrowed grace. She became a wife who shared more than 4 decades with a man who had recognized peace in her presence before their love story had even begun. Craig T. Nelson's tribute revealed how deeply she affected the people with whom she worked. Barbara Eden, another friend and colleague, remembered her with affection. Fans across generations returned to old clips: Mary Stone smiling across a black and white living room, Johnny Angel floating from a record player, Shelley trading lines with Elvis, Christine calmly looking at Coach Fox as if she knew exactly what he was about to say. Those images make loss feel strange. Television preserves youth. A person can be gone, yet one button brings back the face they had at 14, 20, or 50. The performance begins again, untouched by time. For a moment, grief and memory occupy the same room, but Shelley's greatest legacy may exist outside those preserved images. It lives in a family that had 25 additional years with her after a transplant. It lives in caregivers who heard a famous woman describe the pain they thought nobody understood. It lives in viewers who learned, through Christine on Coach, that strength could be quiet and comedy could contain tenderness. And it lives in a marriage that survived the kind of waiting no couple ever wants to face. When Shelley's liver failed, she could not know whether she would see another Christmas, another anniversary, another ordinary morning beside Mike. The transplant gave her all three again and again, year after year. So what happened to Shelley Fabares at 82? She died, yes, but that is not the whole answer. What happened was that a child star grew older without surrendering her humanity. A pop singer learned that the most important use of a voice was not always a song. A daughter turned the cruelest chapter of her family's life into advocacy for strangers. A critically ill woman received a second chance and treated it as a responsibility. And a marriage that began with one person calming another lasted until death separated them. Perhaps that is why the family's final words feel more powerful than any list of credits. Shelley Fabares spent a lifetime in front of cameras, but the people who loved her remembered what happened when the cameras were gone. They remembered the warmth. They remembered the humor. They remembered the compassion. And somewhere inside that final family circle was Mike Farrell, the man who once discovered that merely sitting beside Shelley made a troubled world feel quieter. For 42 years, she was his home. Now the voice behind Johnny Angel is silent. Mary Stone's television living room belongs to another era. The set of Coach has long been dismantled, but the life Shelley lived after the applause, the life of caregiving, survival, service, and enduring love, may be the part worth remembering most. Because in the end, Shelley Fabares did not simply leave behind performances. She left behind time that almost ran out, love that refused to leave, and memories strong enough to remain even after the final scene.